Good morning, respected teachers. From today, we are going to start our classes of English pedagogy. We will be touching upon some of the important concepts, particularly from the perspective of CTET paper 1 and paper 2. We are not going to deep dive. We are not going to deep dive. We'll just try to cover up the aspects from the touchstone of the topic, from the framework, so that we'll be able to do the previous year questions of pedagogical concepts. So today we are going to cover two topics or two concepts or two methods of English of teaching learning process of English. That is number one, grammar translation method, and number two is direct method. So our today's focus will be to cover up these two topics, the grammar translation method and the direct method, along with the previous year questions of the particular topic. Let's start from the first topic, that is the grammar translation method. What is GTM? So GTM, that is grammar translation method, is one of the oldest methodologies. When we say oldest methodologies, so the another term or the tantamount or the equivalent word for oldest is classical. So first thing that we have to take care, we have to keep in our mind is the grammar translation method is the oldest method, which further means it's the classical method of teaching English. Sometimes we have seen the question is being asked like what is the classical method or oldest method, which method is known as the classical method or oldest method of grammar of English teaching. So we'll go with grammar translation method. First thing is it's the oldest method. Why it's the oldest method? Because this method was used to teach Latin and Greek, and the same method is being copied to teach English. What are the features of GTM? What are the salient features of GTM? The first and foremost thing is it is rule driven. When we say it is rule driven means when we teach any concept through grammar translation method, our first and foremost focus area would be the rules of the grammar. We explicitly focus on the grammatical rules, the abstract grammatical rules. First thing that we are going to teach through this method is to focus on the explicit grammatical rules. Second thing, translation is the core of this method. That's why the name is grammar translation method. So we focus on the grammatical rules and then we gradually shift to the translation of the topic, translation of the content, translation of the literature, the poem, whatever we have to teach. What we do is we do translate each and every word, each and every sentence into the mother tongue. That's why this process is known as the mechanical process. Why it's mechanical process? Just like machine, we press the enter button, we get the input and output. Similarly in this, the teacher uses two languages. One is the target language, one is the mother tongue. So what we do is while teaching through GTM, we translate all the concepts, all the elements, all the words and the sentences into the target, into the mother tongue. So use of mother tongue is allowed while teaching through grammar translation method. Third thing is we focus on the accuracy. Our priority is not to teach the language. Our priority is not to teach the skills of communication, whereas we focus on the accuracy of the language. Now, accuracy of grammar or accuracy of the sentences or accuracy of the translation. So our focus is on accuracy. We do not focus on the competency. We do not focus on the communication skills. We do not focus on to make the student able to communicate, to speak, to listen well. What we focus is our student should be able to write the correct language, should be able to read correctly, should be able to pronounce correctly. That's why we say that while teaching through GTM, our focus is on accuracy. Next is the tool that we use while teaching through GTM. What is the tool? That tool is textbook. That tool is the classical text. So the textbook is at the core, is at the heart while teaching through grammar translation method. We focus on the aspects that is given into the textbook. So textbook is at the heart, is at the soul, is at the core of grammar translation method. Whatever poem or stories we get into the textbook, into the literature, we just try to deliver that concept. So textbook is at the focus. Learning is not at the focus. The textbook is at the focus. The content of textbook is at the focus while teaching through grammar translation method. And when we focus on the translation, when we focus on the grammatical rules, when we focus on the accuracy, when we focus on the textbook, this gradually creates an skill imbalance. So we know that in language there are 4 skills, and in order to make a student competent to communicate, we need to focus on all the 4 aspects of the language skills, LSRW. Whereas while teaching through GTM, we do neglect to skills of the language, and those 2 skills are listening and speaking. While teaching through GTM, what we do is we do not focus on the listening and speaking. Our complete focus or attention is generally to the reading and writing aspect of the language. So while teaching through GTM, reading and writing is focused, whereas listening and speaking is ignored, is neglected. So this creates an skill imbalance. Now, if you focus to the role of the teacher and the student while a class is being delivered through the GTM, what a student and teacher will do in the classroom. The teacher works as an administrator, or you can say the traditional teacher. The teacher is solely dependent on the textbook. The teacher is dependent on the grammatical rules. The teacher is dependent on the content, that is the poem or the literature, whatever we have. So we are dependent on the textbook, and the student is dependent on the teacher. Student act as a passive receptive container. So we do pour the knowledge into that receptive container. So student is passive, teacher is active in the sense of transferring the content through rules, through textbook, through translation. So teacher is active, whereas the student is passive, receptive container, while when we deliver the topic through the GTM. So these are the core features of grammar translation method. When we enter into a classroom and we see that the rules are being focused, grammar is being focused, translation is being done, mother tongue is used for translation of each and every word of the sentences, and the accuracy is priority instead of communication. When textbook is at the focus, when skill is imbalanced, which means when we focus on the reading and writing rather than focusing on the speaking and listening. And when we see that teacher is administering the lecture, is delivering the lecture, focusing on the grammar, focusing on the structure, focusing on the translation, and the student is just sitting as a passive receiver and just writing down and mugging up the things or the memorizing the things, we say that that particular class is being delivered through grammar translation method. This is the feature of, these are the features of GTM, grammar translation method. Now, when we enter into a classroom where GTM is being followed, what we'll see what the student is doing. The student, first and foremost thing that the student tries to do in the GTM is, student tries to find out the equivalents, tries to find out the tantamounts or the same and similar words into the mother tongue. So whatever topic is being delivered through GTM, the student would try to find out the equivalents, the student will try to find out the tantamounts, the student will try to find out the similar or same meaning words into the mother tongue. So if we have to, let's say there's a word Q, there's a word in Q in the text that the student has to understand. What student will try to find out is the exact meaning of Q into the Hindi or whatever the mother tongue is. First thing, finding out the equivalents or tantamounts or the similar word or same words in the mother tongue. Second thing, translate the entire sentence verbatim. When I say verbatim, means word by word. Each and every word is important from the perspective of CTET. When I say that translation is done verbatim, translation is done word by word, it means the unit of grammar translation method, when we teach through GTM, the unit is word. Why? Because we translate each and every word. We do not neglect even a single word during the translation process. So what student will do? Student will try to translate it verbatim, word by word, each and every word. Even if it is preposition or whatever that will be translated into the mother tongue. And third thing is deconstruction of sentences grammatically. When we say grammar is through GTM, when we teach grammar through GTM, what we do is we do segregate the elements of grammar, we do divert, or we do separate each and every elements of the chapters of grammar. Parts of speech, noun, tense, voice, whatever the chapters are, whatever the elements of grammar are, we will teach through the diversification, through the diversion. We'll teach noun separately, verb separately, adjective separately, adverb separately, and that too in deconstructed meaning, that too in decontextualized way. We are not going to use these nouns, verbs, adjectives in the terms of context. We are not going to connect it to the real life. What we'll do is we will be focusing on the grammar as the element of language, as the structure of language, and we'll be teaching it as an element and structure of language in the separate and totally exaggerated way. Next is how a teacher executes this a particular lesson using the GTM. If we enter into a classroom and we want to teach something through GTM, grammar translation method, how the class would look like. We are taking an example of an elementary school classroom in a slum of Stephen Spender, as which is a poem, I think in the class 12. We'll take the example of this particular poem to understand how this GTM is being executed into a normal classroom transaction. First and foremost thing is reading and line by line translation. So teacher would stand at the podium, would start reading the lines and translating the lines exactly word by word. First thing, reading and translation line by line. Second step, what we'll do is we will give student a bilingual vocabulary, which means whatever words which we feel that is not up to the standard of the student, or which we can say that a bit higher standard or a difficult word, what we will do is we will give exact, similar, synonym, tantamount, equivalent meaning in Hindi or in Telugu or whatever the language which is the mother tongue of the student. So if we are teaching through GTM, we will definitely focus on vocabulary bilingual list. Number 1, reading line by line and translation. Number 2, giving bilingual vocabulary list to the student. Will write on board and ask the student to write it down in the notebook. So student would have their handy notebook with English and Hindi bilingual meanings. Third step is deductive grammar analysis. While teaching any concept through GTM, we do focus on the grammar in the deductive way, which means we'll focus we will focus in terms of rules and then examples. Rules and then examples. We'll ask the student to write down the rule of grammar and then examples and then mug up the things or memorize the things. So the grammar is being taught in this way, the deductive way. And number 4 is how to assess, how to check whether the student is getting to know what we are teaching, what we are delivering is. We will give the homework that too is dependent on the translation, and that too isolated translation homework. When we say isolated translation homework means we are not going to give the homework in the contextualized way. We are going to give a piece of sentence. We are going to give piece of sentence or different sentences from the chapter, from the content, and ask the student to translate those particular sentences into the English or into the mother tongue. Vice versa it can happen. So homework is generally given as a translation work because the method is grammar translation method. Now when we see that GTM, when we have seen the features of GTM, we need to know what are the advantages and disadvantages or the pros and cons of GTM. Number 1, we'll start with the pros or the advantages or benefits of teaching through GTM, grammar translation method. Number 1 is clear explanation of difficult concepts. While teaching literature, while teaching a poem or while teaching a story, generally we have some abstract concepts Generally, we have some difficult concepts which we cannot explain through the help of charts, through the help of realia in the beautiful manner, and that too in the easiest way. The easiest way in is the GTM, wherein we just translate that particular abstract concept into the mother tongue of the child, and the child would acquire that with ease. So the first benefit is we can give clear explanation of all the difficult concepts. That is the part of the chapter, that is the part of content. Clear explanation of difficult concepts. Let's see the example of that particular poem that we have discussed, An Elementary School Classroom in a Slum. So we have the word rootless weeds. Now it is not easy to explain this rootless weeds term through any other method than to teach through the grammar translation method, wherein we'll just say that rootless weeds means bina jad ki jangli ghas. Student will get to know what does it mean. So it gives us a way to explain in clear way, in easiest way. Second thing, it saves the instructional time. If we teach any concept of English grammar or English literature, that will take time if the method is not a GTM. Why? Because we need to a lot of LTM, we need to do a lot of actions, we need to do a lot of drama, role play, etc. while teaching through any other method. But when we teach through GTM, it saves time. Why? We just need to translate the sentence into the mother tongue of the student, and the student will acquire the meaning of the particular concept that we want to teach. So it's quick because we translate it suddenly, immediately, promptly, instantly. Third is low teacher demand. What does low teacher demand means? While teaching through any other method, your teacher should be competent enough to teach with the fluency. The pronunciation of the teacher should be perfect. The intonation of the teacher should be perfect. The gestures of the gesture, facial expression, everything of the teacher should be perfect. But while teaching through GTM, we do not demand much. We demand, what it demands is just the teacher should know the translation of the particular content or the particular topic, and the teacher will definitely translate it with ease, and then teaching learning transaction would be very, very frequently, easily, or we can say with ease, with a great pace or speed. So it does not demand a highly fluent teacher. And next is strong vocabulary building. So when we teach through GTM, when we teach through grammar translation method, we do provide a bilingual vocabulary list to the student for each and every concept. Now that bilingual vocabulary list will become the individual dictionary of each and every child. So eventually, gradually, a student would have a strong vocabulary, a bilingual strong vocabulary. So these are the pros, or we can say the advantages of teaching through GTM, that is grammar translation method. Now, what are the cons or disadvantages of GTM? The most important aspect of literature, that or the poem or the story, whatever content we want to teach, the most important core or the soul or the central theme or idea is to execute the emotional essence, is to execute the theme, is to transfer that particular values to the student. Now, when we use GTM, grammar translation method, our focus gradually shifts to the grammatical aspects. Our focus gradually shifts to the rules, and because of this, what we neglect is the emotional essence of the poetry and the literature. Student gets a habit of focusing on the grammatical lessons. Students gets a habit of focusing on the translation drills. Okay, so teacher will give the sentence in Hindi, we have to translate in English, or vice versa. So student would focus on the translation drills, and at the cost of what? At the cost of losing the emotional essence of the poetry and literature. Student will not understand the artistic beauty of the literature or the social message that we wanted to convey through that poem or the story. That is destroyed, completely destroyed. So it kills the emotional essence of the poetry and the literature. Next is no active communication or expression. when we are executing any lesson through GTM, we do not provide the opportunity for the student to speak or to listen in the brilliant manner. What we focus is to read, and write and translate and mug up the grammatical rules. So there is no room for active communication. There is no space for expression, and gradually it will hamper the speaking and listening skill of the student. So it does not provide active communication opportunity or expression opportunity. Next is, it reinforces the slow mental translation. What we develop in the student is the habit of mental translation, and that too verbatim translation. When we say verbatim translation, means word by word translation. So whenever we give any situation to the student, what student would do is think in the mother tongue, form the thought, then translate word by word, and then that becomes unnatural paraphrasing. You'll see when the student speaks, that unnatural paraphrasing is quite visible. Why? Because this GTM reinforces the mental translation in such a way that it becomes a habit, that student would not think in the English or in the target language. Student would first think in the mother tongue, then translate, and then speak. Next is, it promotes passive and board learning. Why? Because this particular GTM is teacher centric. GTM, you can say that T is at focus. What is T? It is teacher centric. Teacher centric means teacher will come into the classroom, into the podium, will speak, will translate, will write the things, will provide a bilingual vocabulary list. The student will have to just copy it, mug it up, memorize it, and present, or present it through the homework, that is the translation work. So generally it creates a mechanical atmosphere. It creates an artificial atmosphere wherein the students get bored. Learning is not that much attractive. So it promotes passive board learning, where student acts as machines rather than active listeners or active participants in the learning process. Now we need to assess our learning of GTM through some previous year questions of this particular topic. We'll try to cover up some of the important questions that was asked in various years from 26 to 2011, and we are going to cover only the topic, that is grammar translation method. As of now, we'll start with question number 1, that is, which of the following methods gives prominence to the mother tongue as the base for translating and interpreting sentence of the target language? I repeat, which of the following methods gives prominence to the mother tongue as the base for translating? So mother tongue acts as a base, as the foundation for the translation, for the interpretation of the sentence. When we say mother tongue acts as the base, as the foundation for the translation, for the interpretation of the sentences, we use the grammar translation method, GTM. So in GTM, mother tongue is allowed. Yes, it is allowed. It is allowed as a base. It is allowed as a foundation for the teaching learning transaction. It helps in translation. It helps in interpretation. So the answer is GTM, grammar translation method. In GTM, the mother tongue forms the absolute infrastructure of instruction. So the core of instruction, the root, the way, the skill by which we teach is by using mother tongue, forming sentences and translating into the mother tongue. Each and every word, each and every sentence and phrase that is encountered into the L2, that is the target language, let's say for English, is decoded, phrased, and translated into the learner's first language to verify the comprehension. We need to know whether the student is understanding the concept or not. I'm sorry, there is some technical problem. Please wait. Okay, let's move to the next question. Question 1 we have done. A teacher introduces a new grammatical rule in class, writes structural formulas on the blackboard, provides explicit textbook definition, and then asks her student to complete translation drills. Which method is being adopted here? Inductive, direct, deductive, and communicative method. We need to understand. First, we will focus on the key terms. Introduces a new grammatical rule. So, introduction of grammatical rule we can see. Second, writes structural formula, which means the grammatical rules are being written on the blackboard. Then, explicit textbook definition. We focus on the definitions given in the textbook, which means we are focusing on the content of the textbook. That means textbook is working as a tool, which we have seen in the GTM. And then ask the student to complete a translation drill or a translation homework. So these are all the features matching with GTM. Now in option we don't have GTM, inductive, direct, deductive, communicative. So we need to know that the foundation of grammar translation method, the core of grammar translation method, or the skill by which the grammar translation method is to be executed into the classroom is known as the deductive method. So deductive method is at the root, is at the foundation of grammar translation method. So when we do not have the option of GTM, we'll go with deductive method. Why other options are not right? Communicative means it focuses on the communication. When we see, but we see in question there's no element of communication visible. Direct method, when we use only the target language to teach the particular language, and then inductive method we'll discuss later on. Okay, deductive. The question outlines a classical top-down instructional model, where the teacher presents a formal generalized rule. What we present is, we present general rule of tense, rule of voice, rule of narration, whatever it is, and then provide illustrative mechanical equations, examples, and then ask the student to apply an exercise. So this method is deductive method, which is at the core, which is at the root, which is at the foundation of grammar translation method. If it is asked that what is the psychological core of grammar translation method, what is the psychological root of grammar translation method, we'll say that psychological core of grammar translation method, psychological root of grammar translation method is the deductive method of teaching English, or the deductive method. Next, one of the major limitations of the classical method of language teaching is that when we say classical method, it means we are talking about GTM. Classical method is another name of GTM, or it's the synonym of grammar translation method. Okay, one of the major limitations of grammar translation method or classical method is it overemphasizes communicative competence. Do we focus on the communicative competence while teaching through grammar translation method or classical method? The answer is no. It fails to provide student with reading proficiency. Is it like that? We know that while teaching through classical method, while teaching through grammar translation method, our focus is on reading and writing. So it is exactly opposite statement, which means no. It does not improve a learner's ability to speak and listen fluently. When we teach through GTM, when we teach through classical method, what we ignore is, we ignore the speaking skill, we ignore the listening skill. So it does not improve either the speaking or the listening skill. Then it requires highly sophisticated audiovisual laboratories. Do we need anything, any LTM or proficient teacher or anything while teaching through classical method or grammar translation method? Answer is no. It can be executed anywhere, anytime. The teacher just need to know the translation of the particular content into the mother tongue. That is enough. So D is also wrong. We'll go with option C. It does not improve a learner's ability to speak and listen carefully or fluently. The classical method is widely recognized Academic synonym of GTM. So the academician do say that grammar translation method is equals to classical method, or both are the synonyms. Okay, because, and why it is known as classical method? Because it was used to teach that particular Latin and Greek in the ancient era. Next, vocabulary in the grammar translation method is principally taught through. If you have to teach through GTM, how will you teach vocabulary? By using picture, by using contextual clues, by using realia? No, this is not the feature of GTM or the classical method. List of isolated bilingual words and their literal translations. Okay. Immersive role plays and situational dialogues. Situational dialogues, role plays is not part of GTM. Acoustic drilling patterns in language laboratories. We do not require language laboratories for teaching through GTM or the direct method, or the grammar translation method. So what we do is, we do provide the list of isolated bilingual words. When we say isolated bilingual words, what does it mean? We do separate, we do segregate the word from the context. We do just write the word and its meaning into the mother tongue. So we do isolate the word from the part of the sentence, from the phrase, and then provide the meaning in the isolated form into the mother tongue. So option B, we do provide list of isolated bilingual words and their literal translation while teaching through grammar translation method, or the GTM. List of isolated bilingual words and their literal translation. GTM relies on decontextualized vocabulary building. What does it mean? Decontextualized vocabulary building. Separate the word from the context. Separate the word from the real life. Focus on the word as the unit of the content that is to be taught. So this is decontextualized vocabulary building. And when we decontextualize this, we provide the bilingual list of vocabulary. The grammar translation method systematically puts its primary emphasis on which of the following skills. So we need to find out the primary emphasis, the skills that is being focused through GTM. Where do we focus? Do we focus on listening and speaking when we teach through GTM? Do we focus on listening and speaking? Do we focus on speaking and writing? Do we focus on reading and writing? Maybe. Do we focus on listening and reading? No. So while teaching through GTM, while teaching through grammar translation method, while teaching through classical method, we focus on reading and writing. Our primary focus is on reading and writing. We just read, we translate, and we give the written work, and then that is being copied. That's it. So reading and writing is at the core of the grammar translation method. Reading and writing. GTM is structurally designed around written discourse. The lesson flows begins with the student's text reading, classical literature or expository prose, and finishes with the students writing down translated sentences. So what student will do? Will read a paragraph of the text and then translate it. So we are focusing on reading and then translating. That means writing. In the grammar translation method, grammar rules are learned through or taught through inductive, deductive, implicit or incidental to communicative tasks. While teaching through GTM, we do not focus on inductive way or implicit way, or the communicative task. We focus on the deductive way, wherein we teach the rules first, then examples, and then give the homework. So in GTM classroom, explicit structural paradigms are handed down directly from the teacher to the passive student. Children do not observe a set of sentences to intuitively extract patterns on their own. Instead, they memorize explicit abstract rules. I repeat, while teaching through GTM, we focus on the deductive method. When we say we focus on the deductive method, which means we do provide the student the rules and then examples and then ask the student to mug up the rules and the examples and execute that into the translation. Whereas in inductive, what we do provide a pattern of sentences, ask the student to identify the pattern, find out the rule, and then write the rule in the contextualized way. That is inductive. It is exactly opposite of inductive. That is deductive. We focus on deductive way while teaching through grammar translation method, where unity is subject plus as a verb and V3 like that. Next, the major drawback of continuous word-for-word translation in an elementary school classroom is that. So, while teaching through GTM, what do we follow? We follow word-for-word translation or word-by-word translation or verbatim translation. What is the drawback of that particular word-to-word translation habit? Number one, it dilutes structural accuracy in writing. It prevents learners from reading authentic English text. It inhibits learners' ability to think directly into the target language. It makes classroom discipline impossible to maintain. See, it makes classroom discipline impossible to maintain. It's the vague option, so we can eliminate it directly. Let's start with A. It dilutes structural accuracy in writing. When we say that in GTM, in classical method, our focus is on writing, so we cannot say that it dilutes the writing. Wrong. Exactly opposite of GTM. The statement is exactly opposite to the GTM. It prevents learner from ever reading the authentic English text. No, we say that English text or the textbook is at the core, is at the soul, is at the core of that GTM. When we say that English textbook is at the core of the learning teaching transaction, so this statement is completely in contradiction to the feature of GTM, so it's wrong. Now, it inhibits learners' ability to think directly into the target language. Yes, this is one of the most important barriers or the limitations of teaching through GTM. Your student will not become able to think directly into the target language. Your student will get a habit of speaking in mother tongue, then forming the sentences into the target language, and then with the help of translation in the decontextualized way, your student will speak in the target language. So yes, it acts as a barrier to think directly into the target language. So we'll go with option C. It inhibits learners' ability to think directly into the target language. It becomes a hurdle, it becomes a barrier for the student to think directly into the target language, or think directly into the English, or think directly into the whatever language it is, German, French, or whatever. Okay. Next, which method of language teaching rejects the use of learners' native language means mother tongue or the local language, and was established as a direct reaction against the GTM. So which method is the reaction against the GTM? Or we can say, which method encounters the GTM? Which method is totally opposite to the GTM? That is direct method. We'll discuss direct method as well in today's class. Direct method is exactly opposite to the GTM. When a teacher evaluates students' language skills strictly by checking the accuracy of their translated sentences at the isolated sentence level, the teacher is aligning with the principles of what we're doing. When a teacher evaluates students' language skills strictly by checking the accuracy, first, we know the feature of GTM is focus on accuracy, then translation, and that too at sentence level, isolated sentence level, which means decontextualized, not with the help of context, totally segregated way, and that is the feature of GTM, grammar translation method. The grammar translation method is traditionally referred to as, grammar translation method was known as the classical method. So the ancient name, old name of grammar translation method was classical method. Why? Because this was the method used to teach the classical languages, or like Greek and Latin. Now we'll move to the next topic, that is the direct method. We know that this direct method is the encounter of the GTM. We realized while teaching through grammar translation method, we were totally ignoring the communicative aspect. We were making the student habitual to translation and focusing upon the grammar rules. So when we shifted to the direct method, that particular drawback of grammar translation method was taken care of. So it emerged in Europe in the 19th century against the grammar translation method. When it was emerged as the opposition of grammar translation method, definitely it will have the features which are exactly opposite to the GTM. Number one, let's see the foundational principles or features of direct method. Number one, it relies on the core belief that acquiring a foreign language, which means any target language or English in the context of India, it should mimic the natural intuitive process of learning a first language. Natural intuitive process of learning the first language. So the academicians, the linguists who support the idea of direct method says that the language acquisition should be in the natural way. Just like we acquire the mother tongue in the natural setup within the environment by using the language in the contextualized way, we should acquire the particular target language or the foreign language or the English in the similar pattern, on the similar line, on the similar basis. Intuitively, generally, simply, naturally. First thing. Second thing, why this direct method came into existence is the reason, the reason behind this is the socio-economic background or the socio-economic catalyst. What we see is, in today's world, globalization is being promoted, global trade is being promoted, we do see migration, we do see border migration, so we need the speakers who can communicate into the target language or the English or the global language. So our focus is now to shift towards the spoken skills, towards the communication, towards the direct thinking into the target language or into the English. That's why the old method, the dilapidated method, the obsolete method, GTM was left and this direct method came into the existence. So we left that GTM and we focused when we started using the direct method just to address the needs of the economic world, just to address the need of the globalized world, wherein we need the fluent speakers who can communicate into the target language directly without translating, without using the mother tongue. When we see this, then definitely our class would be the monolingual classroom. When we say monolingual classroom means only one language, that is the target language, that in the context of India is the English, is to be used while teaching, while transaction of the teaching learning process. So in the direct method, if we have to use the direct method into the classroom, what we'll do is we will not allow the mother tongue to be used in the classroom. So use of mother tongue is strictly prohibited into a classroom where direct method is to be used. So a classroom where the teaching learning process is being done through the direct method, you'll see only one language is being used, that is the target language, that maybe French, German or English or whatever language it is, but only one language will get the existence, will get the space into the classroom or into the teaching learning process. Next is direct association. Now, while teaching language, we need to tell the meaning of the particular words. And in the grammar translation method, we have seen that we used to tell the meaning into the mother tongue or in Hindi. But in the direct method, we cannot use Hindi or any mother tongue. So how will we explain the meaning of particular word, a particular concept, or particular content? In order to make the student understand or comprehend the meaning of the word, what we use is we use the objects, we use the physical actions, we use the realia into the classroom. So we'll bring apple into the classroom to tell the meaning of the apple to the student directly by using the real object or physical actions or through the using various LTMs. So language is taught through direct association. That word or sentence is to be associated with the object, with the physical actions, and then transact the meaning. Next is inductive grammar. When we teach through direct method, we never focus on the grammatical rules or the direct transition of the rules. We do not write the rule on the board and ask the student to copy when we teach through direct method. What we do is we try to use various contextualized pattern of sentences and ask the student to find out the similarities, find out the pattern, find out the rule, and then write it in the contextual way. So we use, while teaching through direct method, we teach grammar in the inductive way, which means from the examples to the rules. And then oral gradation. Since we are not allowing the student to use mother tongue into the classroom while teaching through direct method, so we need to focus on the vocabulary that is related to the student, that is up to the standard of the student, that is up to the comprehension level of the student, or we do focus on the functional vocabulary. When we say functional vocabulary, which means the vocabulary that is to be used by the student into the daily life or into the environment where the student lives. So we do oral gradation. Gradation means we do simplify the word and we do find out the pattern. We do use up to the level of this student. So these are the features of direct method. Now let's see one example of direct method, how to execute a lesson through the direct method into the classroom, into the teaching learning process of the target language of English. What we'll do is, let's see the example. Pointing directly to a picture of a girl, the teacher says, "This is Rita. She has black hair. She is wearing a blue dress." And then the teacher asks the questions, "Who is she?" The class or the student would reply, "She is Rita." The first thing which we have to focus here is, if the student replies in the way, let's say teacher asked, "Who is she?" and this class says, "Rita," or the student replies, "Rita." Teacher need to stop the class, teacher need to stop the student and tell to reply into the full sentences. So in transaction through the direct method, we do expect the answers into the full sentences. No one word answer is allowed. So the teacher pointed towards this particular girl and shared some of the features of the girl, and then asked questions directly into the English, and student are replying directly into the English. What is the color of her hair? It is black. If the student says black, teacher will stop and will ask to speak in full sentence using the punctuation, using the intonation as well. What is the color of dress? It is blue. So you can see the transaction between the teacher and the student, or the teacher and the class, is happening only in the target language, that is English. No place, no space, no room for any mother tongue or any other language into the classroom while teaching through direct method. Now, when we use this direct method into the classroom to teach English or the target language, what are the limitations? What are the drawbacks? What are the cons of it? Number one is, this method demands highly motivated, highly fluent teachers. If you do not have the fluency over the language, if you yourself do not know the proper intonation, if you do not know where to take the pause, where to raise the voice, where to lower down it, you won't be able to transact the lesson through direct method. So first and foremost thing that is required to teach through the direct method is, we need highly motivated and highly fluent teachers. Let's assume a teacher who has studied through Hindi medium and then posted at some remote location. Will that teacher be able to teach or execute the lesson through the direct method? No, this expectation itself is wrong. Second thing, this direct method, we can teach through this direct method into a small classroom, but overcrowded classroom where the number of students or the strength is much, it's not possible to use this direct method, because in direct method we need to focus on the student comprehension, we need to focus on the sentences, we need to give the situation or the context for the student to speak. In order to create those situation context, we need time. So in an overcrowded classroom, this transaction is not possible. And if you see in the Indian context, we'll see that the elite private schools do follow this direct method, but whereas in compared to that elite private schools, in government schools, we do not see the use of this direct method as a teaching methodology. So these are the drawbacks of direct method. No mother tongue use, which means student will not get the confidence to speak from the first minute or from day one. High teacher demand, the teacher should be highly fluent, highly motivated. It is not suitable for large classes, because you need to create the context, and creating the context in a dense class is not possible. And then performance burden. It creates unnecessary burden on the teacher if we have to use the direct method into an overcrowded classroom where the resources are limited. It's not possible. Now, from the perspective of CTET or CTET, we need to understand few facts about direct method, that are: number one, when you see that the example or the question or the language of the question is like the teacher, or during the teaching learning process, or in the transaction of teaching learning process, when you say 100% use of target language, which means there is no room, no space for any other language, or you say when mother tongue or local language is strictly banned, strictly prohibited, which means the answer is always direct method. So if mother tongue is not allowed, if mother tongue is strictly banned, if teacher is punishing or imposing fine while using any word of mother tongue, or when we say when 100% vocabulary of the target language is used, the method is direct method. Second, when we say that grammar is taught in the inductive way, which means no rules, no formula is being delivered at the beginning of the session, at the beginning of the content, rather it is used in the context through the various chain of examples, we use direct method. So we can take it in other way, like what is the psychological core? What is the psychological core, or what is the philosophical core behind the direct method? The answer is the answer is inductive method or inductive way. So if you do not get the option of direct method into the in your question, and then you have to select any other option, you have to go with inductive method. So we can say that direct method, we can equate it with inductive, and similarly grammar translation method, we can equate that to deductive. So the core, the foundation of GTM was the foundation of GTM was deductive method. Similarly, the core, the foundation of direct method is inductive way of teaching. And when the vocabulary is explained through bilingual list, when the vocabulary is explained through bilingual list, which means the target language and the mother tongue, the answer is GTM, grammar translation method. Whereas when the vocabulary is explained through the real objects or the realia, or the vocabulary is explained through the actions, or the vocabulary is used explained through pictures or LTMs, we can say that the method is direct method. We have seen some of the tricks: 100% use of target language, no room for mother tongue, grammar is taught inductively, the vocabulary is explained through realia, real objects, actions and pictures. The answer is either direct method or the inductive way. Now, we need to understand some of the advantages and disadvantages, or pros and cons of the direct method. Let's see with the advantages. Let's start with the advantages or pros. Number one, active English speaking. When we ask student what is this, and the student replies it is a book, it is a board, this is the marker, I am the boy, which means we are providing the opportunity to speak in English actively or to speak in the target language actively. So while teaching through direct method, we do provide the opportunity to the student or the learner to speak in that particular language and participate actively. Second, we do promote direct thinking into English or direct thinking into the target language. Whatever language that we need to teach, we need to transact, we do give the opportunity to the student to communicate in that particular language, and eventually this habit becomes the student acts as a sharp and shrewd mind in terms of thinking at that particular language directly. So instead of translating, instead of thinking in Hindi, instead of trying to find out the tantamount or the equivalent word or the synonym or the equivalent thing in the mother tongue, what the student will do, will get a habit, will develop a habit of thinking in the target language directly. That's why this particular method is known as direct method. So we develop the habit into the student to think in the particular target language only. And the last, high natural interaction. When we are giving opportunity to the student to speak daily into the classroom, definitely a student will get a habit, will get a natural environment or the conducive environment to talk naturally. So it gives high natural interaction opportunities. When we are speaking daily into the target language directly, when we are thinking directly into the target language, it will create a natural setup, natural interaction environment. So that artificial element which we do see in the grammar translation method, where student will translate into the mother from the mother tongue to the English, and then artificial structured sentence. You'll see the artificial structure sentence that is not available in the direct method. In the direct method, you'll find a dynamic classroom, a natural classroom interaction, where the student are in the habit of speaking in the target language, are in the habit of thinking in the target language. So in this method, we see the high natural interaction. And the next, flawless pronunciation. So when we teach through direct method, student has to listen to carefully and speak carefully. So student would focus on the rhythm, student would focus on the intonation, student would focus on the voice modulation, student would focus on the pronunciation of the teacher and would imitate that. That means the pronunciation of the students who do understand the particular language in through the direct method will be apart from the students that learn the language through grammar translation method. So we see flawless pronunciation or the good pronunciation or the standard pronunciation when we learn the language through the direct method. Flawless pronunciation, no scope of mispronunciation when we learn the language, target language through the direct method. So these are the advantages or pros of teaching English or any target language through the direct method. Now, what are the cons or disadvantages of teaching through the direct method? Number one is it requires a high amount of energy. It requires high creativity. It requires flawless fluency from the teacher. Whatever concept you need to explain, whatever abstract concept we need to explain, we have to explain that particular abstract concept in the direct target language. It's not easy. It's not that easy. It's not cup of tea. What we have to do is we have to think about different contexts that we need to create throughout the teaching learning process into the classroom so that the student acquires the meaning naturally. Students acquire the meaning through the direct link. So we need to give a lot of choices, a lot of opportunities to understand the meaning, to catch the meaning, to fetch the meaning. So the teacher needs to be highly fluent. The teachers needs to be flawless. The teachers need to be highly energetic. The teacher needs to be highly creative. And we need a lot of time. We need a less crowded classroom. We need a lot of resources to make the LTM. So these are the disadvantages of using direct method into the execution of any teaching learning process of any language. Now we need to summarize what we have learned or what we have discussed in the direct method. We are going to summarize all the pointers quickly. So what are the key points of direct method that we have discussed? Number one, the direct method is a way of teaching English where only I repeat, where only English is used in the classroom. Since we are doing English pedagogy, so I'm using English. You can replace it with any target language, be it Tamil, Telugu, Hindi, whatever it is. So if you teach through direct method, you use only that particular language into the classroom. Number one. Number two, using the student's native language or the local language or the mother tongue is completely banned, is completely restricted, is not allowed at all. So it is completely banned. Mother tongue is completely banned, local language is completely banned. Then this direct method was against, or was is standing against the grammar translation method. So it is encountering the grammar translation method. So it does not focus on the memorization, it does not focus on the translation, it does not focus on the rote memorization, it focuses on the contextualized use of the language in the daily classroom transaction. So we avoid translation, and it acts as a reaction against the GTM. Next, the direct method believes that the second language or the target language should be learned naturally. Just like we acquire the mother tongue from the environment by using in the daily life, we should acquire this particular target language naturally by using at the home, by using at the classroom, by using at the different contexts. So it says that the language, that the target language should be acquired naturally, should be acquired directly. Vocabulary. How do we teach vocabulary through the direct method? We use vocabulary, we use realia, we use real objects, we use pictures, charts, we use physical acting, demonstrations, drama, role play to give the meaning of the word rather than providing the bilingual list. We provide bilingual list of vocabulary while teaching through GTM, whereas we provide opportunity to explore, opportunity to do role play, opportunity to dramatize, to understand the meaning of the word while teaching through the direct method, because we do not allow using the mother tongue or the local language or the native language while discussing the words. So vocabulary is taught using the real objects or the realia in the direct method. Next is grammar rules. How do we provide the grammar rules to the student while teaching through the direct method? We do not give them grammar rules like write down tense and then the types of tenses. We do teach the grammar rules in the inductive way. When we say in the inductive way, which means we give them context, we give them scenarios, we give them opportunity and patterns to identify and come out of their rules by their own. They explore the rules and they come out of the rules by observing the pattern of the language that we use in the classroom while teaching learning process. Next, this helps students to stop that translation work, to think in that mother tongue. It makes you able to think directly into the target language, which means your vocabulary, your language fluency and your pronunciation all will improve if you learn the language, any target language through the direct method, if you teach the language through the direct method. Now there are some cons, there are some limitations, there are some drawbacks of direct method that are it gives an immense burden on the teacher. Because teacher needs to be highly energetic, to be highly motivated, to be highly creative, to be highly fluent to teach in the direct method or through the direct method. Number two, if we have to transfer the meaning of any abstract concept, it becomes really difficult to teach through the direct method. When we cannot use the mother tongue to explain the meaning of the word, sometimes we face the difficulty to make the student able to understand or comprehend the meaning of the abstract words. For example, when we say regret, how to explain the meaning of this particular word regret without using the mother tongue becomes a challenge. And then we require a lot of resources. We require realia, we require LTMs, we require props, and sometimes it is not available everywhere in every classroom. If it is located at a remote area, what will you do? So while teaching through direct method, we need a lot of resources. This is a limitation of direct method. And then if the class is overcrowded, it is not possible to teach through the direct method any language, be it Hindi, be it English, or be it Tamil, Telugu, or whatever language it is. So in overcrowded classroom, transaction becomes really difficult. Now we need to see some of the previous year questions to check our understanding of the direct method, whether we are able to understand it or not. We'll see 10 to 12 questions quickly based on the direct method or the understanding of the direct method. These are all the questions of the previous year. We'll start with question 1. The direct method of teaching English is also known as. So just observe the setup, the scenario, the environment of the classroom while we execute the lesson through the target language, in the target language, only by the target language, which means this setup is generally natural setup. No artificial setup. We do not make anything. We do not create any artificial things. We just create the context, and the student interacts with the student interacts with the teacher. So this direct method is generally known as natural method of teaching language. In the direct method of teaching English, which of the following language skills is emphasized first and foremost prominently? So if you have to teach through the direct method, or if you are executing any lesson through direct method, on which skill you will focus more? If we are using direct method, we definitely focus on listening and speaking more. If we are teaching through GTM or the grammar translation method, our general focus is on reading and writing. If we teach through direct method, our general focus shifts towards listening and speaking. We give the opportunity to the student to listen well and speak well while teaching through direct method. Grammar in the direct method of teaching English is taught. So how do we teach grammar through direct method? How do we address grammatical aspects while executing any lesson through the direct method? We know that we use inductive way of teaching grammar while teaching through direct method, whereas when we have to teach through grammar translation method or GTM, we do focus on the deductive way. We focus on the deductive way in GTM, and we focus on the inductive way in the direct method. So which method is at the psychological core of the direct method? The answer is inductive. What is inductive? We have to make the patterns, we have to give a lot of examples and ask the student to find out the pattern and find out the general universal rule. This is the way we use in direct method, inductive. Which one of the following is a major limitation or drawback of the direct method? Limitation or disadvantages or drawback of the direct method. It neglects listening comprehension entirely. It is exactly opposite to the feature of the direct method, because we know in the direct method we focus on the speaking on the listening skill. We do not neglect, we focus on the listening skill. So this is exactly ironical or opposite to the feature of the direct method. It requires highly fluent native like proficient teachers. It may be. We do require fluent teachers. We do require native like proficient speakers, proficient teachers to teach through direct method. This may be one of the feature or limitation of the drawback of the direct method. Next is it relies heavily on the mechanical drills and repetition. Okay, it overemphasizes the reading and literary text. So we need to understand, we need to find out which one is one of the major limitations of teaching through direct method. That is, it requires highly fluent native like proficient teachers. If the teacher is not fluent, if the teacher is not proficient, you cannot execute any lesson through the direct method. What is the unit of teaching in the direct method? So if you have to teach through the direct method, what is the smallest unit that you use throughout the teaching learning process or throughout the teaching learning transaction? What we do is we focus on words, phrase, sentences or paragraph. Sentences. What is the unit of teaching in the direct method? Unit of teaching is sentences. What is the unit of teaching while we execute any lesson, any concept through GTM? If you are executing any lesson through grammar translation method, your unit would be word. Because we know that in a grammar translation method, word to word, word for word translation is required. But while teaching through the direct method, we focus on the sentences. We ask the student to reply in the full sentences. We do not accept one word answer. So the unit of direct method is always sentence. While teaching English through direct method, the use of students' mother tongue is. So if you are executing any lesson, if you are teaching any poem, if you are teaching any story or any literature literary work through direct method, what will you allow the mother tongue execution of mother tongue in the classroom? Let's see. Mother tongue encouraged to clarify complex abstract ideas. Do we take help of mother tongue while teaching through direct method to explain the abstract ideas? No. We know that while executing any lesson through the direct method, if there are abstract concepts or abstract ideas and we need to clarify that, we need to use the real objects, the realia, the pictures, the LTMs, but we do never use or never allow the use of mother tongue into the classroom. So this option is wrong. Totally vanished and prohibited. It may be used only by the student, not by the teacher. Is it like student can use mother tongue, but teacher will not use mother tongue? No. Both students and teachers are not allowed to speak any single word of mother tongue into the classroom where the teacher uses the direct method. So this is wrong. Allowed during evaluation periods only. If we have to assess the student, if we have to assess the learning, do we allow the student to use mother tongue? No. It vanishes, it prohibits totally, 100%, completely. We completely vanish, we completely prohibit, we completely reject, we completely dissect. We do not allow the use of mother tongue while teaching through the direct method. In the direct method, abstract vocabulary is explained to young learners primarily through. If you have to teach any abstract vocabulary, which means the vocabulary for which the students will not generally be able to make mental images, what will you do? How will you help the student to form the mental images to understand the abstract concept or the abstract vocabulary? Will you do direct translation into the local vernacular, which means translation into the mother tongue? No. Association of ideas, context and paraphrasing? Maybe. Dictation of textbook, glossary, definitions. Visual aids like realia, objects and models. Yes, we use visual aids, realia, objects and models to teach the abstract concepts or abstract vocabulary while teaching through the direct method. The direct method builds a direct bond or link between. Direct method builds a direct relation, direct bond, direct link between English word and mother tongue word, target language word and its visual spelling, language form and grammatical rule, English word phrase and its target meaning and experience. So English word or phrase and its target meaning and experience, we do try to create a bond between them while teaching through the direct method. Which methodology rejects the translation? Rejects, which means does not allow. Which methodology rejects translation and textbook heavy rote memorization, focusing instead on active conversational practice in target language setting? What do we have to do? We have to identify which methodology rejects. What does it reject? It rejects translation. It rejects textbook memorization. We know that textbook is at the core of GTM. We know that translation is at the core or soul of GTM. When we have to reject the translation, when we have to reject the textbook, when we have to reject the rote memorization, which means we have to reject the grammar translation method. So in which method we do the, or we can say alternatively we can say which method opposes the grammar translation method? Answer is always direct method encounters, direct method is at the different pole from the grammar translation method. A teacher displays a real apple, which means realia, in the class and directly repeats this is an apple without translating it into Hindi. Which method is being adopted? If we say this is an apple, यह एक सेब है, which means we use grammar translation method. But when we present a real object or the real apple into the classroom to the students and then say that this is an apple, we are using realia or the real object to tell the meaning of the word. That is the feature of direct method. One of the guiding principles of direct method is that vocabulary should be introduced. How will you introduce vocabulary if you have to teach through the direct method? Through alphabetical bilingual vocabulary sheets, only in meaningful context and connected sentences, via rigorous daily spelling test and dictation, by explaining historical etymology roots. By explaining historical etymological roots, no sense, it doesn't make any sense. Via rigorous daily spelling test and dictation, it's a kind of drill. Through alphabetical bilingual vocabulary sheets, only in meaningful context and connected sentences. We'll give them context, we'll give them connected sentences, and we'll ask them to memorize or understand or comprehend the vocabulary through the context, through the connection, through the daily life, Sometimes this only also is the right option. In the classroom, utilizing the direct method, error correction is predominantly handled through. How will you do error correction in a classroom where you have to execute the lesson through the direct method? Immediate negative reinforcement by penalization. So will you punish the student immediately? Student self-correction guided by the teacher questioning, maybe. Writing out the correct responses 20 times, it is always wrong. In CTET, repetition, it's always wrong. Ignoring errors. If we ignore the errors, how will we improve? So we cannot ignore the errors. Now we have only one option left, that is student self-correction guided by the teacher questioning. Student will do self-correction. Student will check whether he or she is at the right path or the right way or not with the help of questioning done by the teacher, which means scaffolding by the teacher. Option B. Which of the following aligns closely with the pedagogical philosophy of the direct method of English teaching? So philosophy or the core of direct method is: language is primarily taught through systematic text decoding. Reading comprehension takes strict precedence over speaking skills. The classroom environment should replicate natural target language acquisition. Translation is an efficient tool to build semantic proficiency. What is the philosophy? What is the philosophy? What is the core behind the direct method? The philosophy that works, that acts behind the direct method is that we need to create an environment, we need to replicate a natural environment, just like we acquire the mother tongue. In that particular setup, in that particular environment, we need to acquire the target language, the English, in the natural way. Option C. This is the philosophy behind the direct method. We need to create an environment, we need to make the student able to acquire the language naturally. Why is the direct method often considered challenging and less practical for large crowded government school classroom in India? I am not asking this. This was being asked by the CTET previous year question. This is: why is the direct method often considered challenging and less practical for large crowded government school classroom in India? Because it requires a completely quiet environment with no student talking. If no student talking is there, how can you say that that's the direct method? It demands extensive individual oral practice and high teacher attention per child, maybe. It can only be conducted using high-tech electronic audio equipment, no. If the teacher is proficient, he can use direct method. We do not require high electronic audio equipment. Without that, it is possible. It depends on student familiarity with classical languages like Latin. No. If we have to teach English, what is the role of Latin? No role. Now we have only one option left, that is option B, and it says it demands extensive individual oral practice and high teacher attention per child. Yes, teacher has to pay attention to each and every child of the classroom, that too high attention, more attention, cautious attention, or you can say we need to pay heed or great heed. We need to pay great heed to the student, each and every student. And then it demands extensive individual oral practice. We need to give opportunity to each and every student to practice and speak into the classroom. So option B is the feature of direct method. That's why we do not promote direct method into an overcrowded government school. A teacher avoids giving explicit rules while teaching the English tenses systems. Instead, she presents series of situational examples, leading students to spot the pattern. This style reflects which feature of the direct method. When we give a series of situation, when we give a series of examples, when we give a series of context and ask the student to find out the pattern and reach up to a conclusion, reach up to a rule on their own with the help of the teacher, we follow inductive grammar learning. Thank you so much. I hope we are able to understand some of the topics, some of the methods of English pedagogy. We have practiced previous year questions as well. Thank you so much. Thank you.